I was told that this lens, the Canon RF 24 to 240 millimeter lens with its extreme focal range and its relatively compact, lightweight build, should be the only lens that I bring on my 1-month trip to Europe. And obviously, I didn't listen. That being said, this lens is the first lens that I pulled out for my one lens challenge, where for one day I limit myself to a single lens and then come report back on the experience. The goal is to help fellow content creators get a practical look at the pros and cons of different focal lengths and ranges. This is not going to be a detailed spec-focused review or anything, just some real-life use case content from somebody who is desperately trying to get the most out of all of her gear, and who's also trying to capture the beauty of all of the places that she's visiting on this trip. Which is why I'm actually filming this video from, what's it called? Frognerparken in Norway. I took this lens out on an 1.5-hour hike up in Norfjell. It seemed like the perfect choice because for a hike, I wanted to be able to capture things that were up close and far away without having to stop and switch my lenses. I didn't properly vlog this excursion by talking to the camera because we were hiking with family and people I didn't know. And the reality is adding a mic to my camera setup would have complicated things as I wasn't wearing the right shoes, the terrain was a bit rocky, and there were some rain clouds looming. That being said, at keeping the lens at its widest, 24 millimeters, I could have technically vlogged by just holding the camera out and up towards my face. One thing that I unfortunately did not realize until the next day was that for our entire hike, I did not have the lens stabilization turned on, which means that overall my footage was pretty shaky, especially when shooting at its most narrow end. But luckily I was shooting at 60 frames per second, so slowing it down did make it a little bit more salvageable. Because of that, I did actually take the lens out again for a little island adventure and filmed some stabilized content, which I will just share rapidly at the end of this video. So let's share more of this lens in action against the backdrop of our adventure. We set out bright and early, although not that bright. It was overcast, with my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and nephew. They are currently living in Norway, so they gave us the lay of the land along with some of their friends. It was freezing cold and neither Darren or I were dressed appropriately for a hike. Me in these very thin leggings and flat-soled shoes, and him in business casual. Despite it being really cold though, there were a ton of mosquitoes, so we had to pause and spray ourselves down. If we hadn't been going with locals, there is no way we would have found our way. With the exception of a few man-made crossings and shelter locations, the trails were mostly just marked with some paint splattered on rocks. We also didn't see a single other person as we hiked, and once we lost sight of the town we were staying in, it seemed like we were the only people on Earth. I was honestly so mesmerized by how green everything was, and the footage really doesn't do it justice because of all of the haze, which just got thicker and thicker the higher we climbed. We stopped a couple times to try berries. These little orange ones are called cloudberries, and when we made it to the top, half our crew, Darren included, were brave enough to jump into the waterfall. Do you remember when I said it was freezing out? Yeah, the water was even colder. Then we climbed back on down and Darren and I hit the spa afterwards. Hiking with this lens was honestly a breeze. While it is one of the bigger lenses in my collection, it is still technically quite compact for the range that it offers. The 24mm side is perfect for getting those sweeping landscapes, and the 240 is good for those detail shots or trying to capture something far away. As we walked, I kept the lens strapped over my shoulder and made use of this lock feature, which prevents the lens from extending as I bumped along. This lens does also have a variable aperture of I think 4 to 6.4.3, which didn't really make a difference while hiking because I kept it at about 7 and above because I wanted to be able to capture as much detail as possible. But it's something to keep in mind if you are ever looking to take this out in darker environments or environments where you you want to have that blurrier background. So the obvious pro of this lens is that you just get that all-in-one focal range. You're not switching out your lenses, but I did find that it made me a little bit lazy. Find that when I am restricted to a single focal length, that I have to get more creative in my shots and stop and think a bit more about what I'm capturing. Whereas with this, I feel like I'm just on rapid fire, zooming in and out, capturing things that aren't the most creative, but I do think in the future I could challenge myself a little bit more. But then again, with something like a hike, you don't really have the time to stop and slow down, especially when you're hiking with other people. All in all, I am glad that I brought this lens. It is a lens that I actually purchased with travel in mind, and it is also currently the only zoom lens in my collection. It's not necessarily the lens you're gonna take out if you have a very specific use case in mind, like dark light shooting, portrait shooting, anything where you wanna have a lot of bokeh, but it's versatile and will help you get the shot, especially if you are short on time. Stay tuned for the next lens in this one lens challenge series, and now please enjoy some of the footage shot with the lens stabilizer on as we adventured through Hovadoya. Thanks, and until next time.